Hey, we are starting the hourglass section of this quilt. And this is a very small section. There's only 3 hourglass blocks. I'm going to show you one single method for making these blocks, but there's 2 approaches to that method. Okay, so just in case you are brand new to quilting, I'm going to show you a little visual of hourglass blocks. They always have that very balanced look with 4 triangles. They're very equal. You'll see them in traditional quilts, in both like utility quilts or heirloom quilts. This shape goes way, way back, and it usually represents like the passing of time or something like that. Within Dilly Dally, it's going to add movement and just a nice balance with the other blocks. All right, so the method that I'm going to show you is taking 2 squares, drawing an X on one of them, and sewing along one of those lines. So it's a really simple approach, but it does involve handling a triangle unit. So you do want to treat them with care. And instead of showing you how to make them before we start the blocks, I'm going to show you all of this within the first block, and then we'll cover it again in the following blocks after that. Let's get started. So block number 35 looks like this. Pretty basic. Just 4 hourglass units. We're going to do one with lines, one without lines. Then after that, you'll choose which way you like to make them. Then we'll have 2 blocks. And these are really cute shapes. I don't know how much you have worked with hourglass shapes, but they really just spruce things up, in my opinion. Especially on that Ohio star, they really make really interesting star points, which you're going to see in the next block. But let's learn how to make them first. So the red is your A fabric, and the low volume is your background fabric. And here's what you need to make this block. So we're going to make these hourglass units without drawing lines. So I want to show you that. But on this one, we are going to draw lines. So you want to draw a line on corner to corner. Let your ruler split. I'm just going to take a basic marking pen and then draw a line this way, rotate around, and then draw another line over here to create that X. So just like that. And let's go to the sewing machine. All right, let's learn how to do it with the lines first. We're going to put right sides together and using either your foot, the line of your tape, if you've got tape right here, you want to sew a scant 1/4 inch on both sides of one line, okay? So I'm going to use my foot to do that. Flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. And this is pretty much just like a half square triangle. They're really close methods. All right, and then we would be ready to set this seam and trim it. But let's look at not having the line on there first. So again, we're going to put right sides together. And we're going to sew just the same way we do a half square triangle. So I'm going to line up my laser or your tape, whatever you've got going on. And I'm going to sew a scant 1/4 inch on both sides of that center line. If you've got tape, you know, you're just keeping this corner on the edge of the tape. If you're using diagonal seam tape, you're keeping it on the inside of that 1/4 inch line tape. Rotate around. Do the same thing for the other side. All right, so this time it just looks like this versus this. They really both have the same thing done, except this one doesn't have the drawn lines and this one does. I'm going to go set these seams and then I'll meet you at the pressing mat. All right, so let's do the drawn line first, the one with the drawn line first. Now, when we're making half square triangles, you know, we just cut on one side. But when it comes to hourglass shapes, you're going to cut on both of these. So we're going to line up the edge of our ruler with the drawn line between our stitches. All right, don't move anything. Pick up your ruler, turn it. If you don't have a rotating, get a smaller mat so you can, you know, rotate it around without moving it. Otherwise, you would do both halves one at a time if you do end up having to move it. Same thing, edge of my ruler right on top of that drawn line. And then we're cutting these into 4 units like that. And they look like that, all right? Now, don't handle them too much because they are cut on the bias and they will warp and give you a hard time. All right, now let me show you when we didn't draw a line. It's the exact same thing, except instead of putting your ruler on your line, you're splitting the corners of your unit with the edge of your ruler. So like this. Rotate it around. It's the same thing, I just can't see lines. All right, and then same thing as before, so that we get 4 units. So you can draw lines, you can skip drawing lines, whatever you want to do, as long as you get these 4 pieces each time. All right, let's go press. So now I am going to press all of my seams open, and I want to do this very delicately. If you always glide your iron over here, this is the moment when you just don't do that. I know I preach not to do it ever, but this is even more important to not do that. I cannot emphasize enough how easily these warp, okay? We're just going to run through each of these, putting them in a place. Getting those seams set and open. Right, so just like that, we're going to give them a good dousing of pressing spray, and then delicately, or not delicately, but up and down, up and down. You're not running it across these things. All right, I think that looks good. Okay, so we're going to go to the sewing machine now, and we're going to sew these units together. They're all going to get sewn like that, but let's go do this step together. All right, so we're taking these, we're going to chain piece all of them one at a time, just like that. There is a seam pressed open. You're just going to line it up, just like that. Right? And go ahead and sew a scant 1/4 inch seam. We're trimming these down, so feel free to use that scant. I'm going to just keep my finger here. You could use a pin, but I am just keeping my finger here to make sure it doesn't move. And then I'm going to check this, because these little triangle points move really easily. And the laser here is also acting, you know, like a guide for me if I wanted to use it that way. But because I've got that scant 1/4 inch foot, I just tend to use that a little bit more. All right, again, just the same way we did before. A little bit more finicky than a half square triangle, but a lot of it is the same. So I think that if you can do a half square triangle, you can make an hourglass. And they just create really cool shapes. I mean, you could have a whole quilt of hourglass units. All right, so we're going to take these little threads and cut them. We've got 4 units that look like this. And let's go to the pressing mat. All right, so before I do anything else, I'm going to just set the seams. So real quick press. And now we're going to press this seam open. I find it a little bit harder to line up my seams when I've pressed them open, but I'm trying to reduce bulk as much as possible. So I prefer to make these, you know, anything triangular with the seams pressed open. Pretty okay. Not 100%, but we'll take it. If ever one isn't okay, you know, you just seam rip it or not. Do whatever makes you feel the best. Oh, that one's spot on. So sometimes I can get it really close and sometimes, you know, it's a fail. If it's ever too much of a fail, I would seam rip these, but these are close enough. All right, spray them with pressing spray and press. All right, we've got to go trim these to size. So let's go to the cutting mat. All right, so I'm going to take my 6.5-inch ruler. I've got my washi tape. I am going to place my washi tape on the 3.5-inch line because that's what we're trimming these to, 3.5 inches. So if you ever want to make these in a different size, whatever you want them to be unfinished at, so in this case we're having them unfinished at 3.5, you make them, you cut your squares a whole inch bigger. So if I wanted to make unfinished 5.5-inch hourglass, I would have cut them at 6.5 inches, you know, so on and so on. I'm going to put this washi tape on the 3.5-inch line this side, getting me this right here. And I'm going to take my Sharpie, 3.5 divided by 2, 1 3/4, 1 3/4 maybe. Yeah. So that's going to be right here. And that's just for my center dot. That's just so I'll know the center. All right. And just in case you are unfamiliar with the Sharpie, this comes off with nail polish remover. I'll show you that in a minute. All right. There's my hourglass unit. There's a diagonal line on your ruler. You want that to go in the seam, but you want that Sharpie dot you made to go in the very center where all the little triangles meet, right? And when you got it in place, double check that your diagonal line is splitting the seam, like it's going right along with that seam, and make sure that the edges of your 3.5-inch section on your ruler, make sure that the corner here and corner there is also splitting that seam going this way. That's how you know that you have your ruler in the right place. So it's more than just the dot. When you think you've got it right, and I think I've almost got it right, put some weight on the ruler, trim here, trim here. All right, I'm gonna lift up. And then I'm gonna put the 3.5-inch lines right here. I'm gonna put them on this edge and forget everything else. I'm not looking at the dot, I'm not looking at the lines on the ruler, just here and here, running along the edge. And then I'll trim here and here to get the 3.5. This is not a perfect one. I have a perfect one coming, but that, to me, is close enough. But only you get to decide what's good enough for you. That's good enough for me. All right. I'm just going to work my way through all of these hourglass units, doing this exact same thing. Okay, and just in case this is the first time you're seeing me mark that ruler, I take a little bit of, this came out of the trash can, a little bit of nail polish, boom, Sharpie markers gone. All right, so we're going to lay out our units. This would be your horizontal hourglass. I like to call it the butterfly one. Butterfly here, and then rotate it around. So you've got the vertical hourglass here, vertical here. And when you have it in the right place, it should make this really nice pinwheel right in there. It would be really, really cool to like make two different, and then that way you could have two different colors going on in each of these. That way you could have all the outside half square triangles in one color and all the inside in the other color, and that would really define this pinwheel a little bit more. But it looks great just like this too. And this is a very, very traditional block. You've probably seen this if you've been in quilting for any length of time. Right now we're going to go sew this row together, and I'll meet you back at the pressing mat. All right, I'm going to set the seams, and we're just going to press one row this way and then one row this way. So smooth that seam with your fingers and press. And then same thing on this row. Smooth, press. And pin. Row 1 is coming down on top of row 2. We're going to nest these seams together, just like that. Just like that. You should feel both of those bits just kind of bump up and kiss each other. I can feel when there's space between them and then when they're overlapping. You know, if you can feel those things, you can know it without looking at it that you need to redo or have it right. All right. I'm going to go sew right across here. Okay, all sewn. Set that seam. Right side down, and we're going to press this seam open. Uh-oh, I disrupted this one, so I'm just going to fix it. All right. Pressing spray. That's it. That is hourglass and block number 35. I'll see you on the next block. To improve your quilting skills, join Quilt Class for just $15 a month. You'll get a new pattern, step-by-step demos, and access to a supportive quilting community. Learn, create, and connect, all from the comfort of your home. Sign up today.